I love talking about Mothman. I think it's such a fascinating topic, but today we're going to talk about 3 of the main encounters as well as these men in black who started showing up trying to intimidate witnesses into keeping quiet. So the legend of Mothman really starts in a West Virginia cemetery on November 12, 1966. This guy named Kenneth Duncan and 4 others are digging a grave for his brother-in-law when Kenneth looks up and sees this dark humanoid figure gliding through the trees. It's only there for about a minute before completely disappearing out of sight. The other men don't look up from their work, they don't notice it, but Kenneth does, and he would later tell the media, making this one of the earliest sightings of Mothman. Just 3 days later on November 15th, the creature is spotted again. That night, Linda and Roger Scarberry were out with their friends Steve and Mary Millette just driving through the old T&T area outside Point Pleasant, West Virginia, when Steve yelled for the group to look because he saw something standing by the road near the old abandoned power plant. And it was this tall, gray humanoid figure, maybe 6 or 7 feet tall with massive wings and glowing red eyes. They sat there and watched as the creature stumbled very awkwardly around the corner of the old power plant building, like it couldn't keep its balance, was maybe injured, but they didn't stick around to find out what it was or what was wrong with it. Instead, Roger hit the gas, actually sending them flying down the exit road towards Route 62, where they saw the creature yet again. But this time, the creature shot straight up in the air, spread its wings, and glided effortlessly back and forth over the end of the car, keeping perfect pace even as Roger pushed the car past 100 miles per hour. This thing was quite literally on their tail and only backed off when they hit the edge of town. At that point, it veered off into a field and just disappeared into the night. The group was obviously terrified, scared, they knew they had to go to the police, but before doing that, they decided they were going to go back to the TNT area to see if the creature was still there. But before they even made it that far, their headlights revealed a dead dog lying on the side of the road, and then out of nowhere, the creature jumped out from behind a tree, flew over their car and into a field, like it was just waiting for them to come back. After that, they turned around and finally went to the police to tell them everything. The deputy who took the report, Deputy Halstead, was a little bit skeptical at first, but he knew the group, he trusted them, and he decided he would follow the group back out to the TNT area and investigate the old power plant. But this is where it gets even more strange. So obviously they have to pass by the spot where this dead dog was on the side of the road, and when they do, it's just gone. And when they finally get to the old power plant, there is no sign of the creature. The only strange thing is just static coming from Deputy Halstead's radio. A press conference is held the next morning. The Scarberrys and Millettes, who mind you haven't even slept a minute since their encounter because they've been so terrified, were questioned by reporters, and before long, this terrifying creature finally has a name: Mothman. The media jumps all over this story, and it's no surprise that it quickly travels over 100 miles away to Salem, West Virginia, where this man, Merle Partridge, is reading the paper. He sees the details about the glowing red eyes and the dead dog, and he immediately feels a connection. Because just over an hour before the Scarberrys and Millettes had their encounter, Merle had his own strange experience that ended with his dog Bandit disappearing. That night, Merle was at home watching TV when the screen just cut to static, followed by this loud, high-pitched noise from outside that sounded like a generator winding up. That noise sent Bandit, his German Shepherd, into an absolute frenzy. When Merle stepped outside, Bandit was on the end of the porch just going absolutely nuts, barking and growling at what appeared to be nothing. But when Merle took his flashlight and shined it out towards the field near his barn, he saw these red glowing circles like bicycle reflectors just staring back at him, and at that point, Bandit bolted off the porch, still growling and barking like he was going to attack whatever was out there. Merle called out after Bandit, but Bandit never came back. When he finally checked the area by the barn during the daylight, he found Bandit's paw prints in a circle in the mud, like he was running in place or chasing his own tail, but there were no paw prints leading away. It was like Bandit literally disappeared from that circle. Sadly, Bandit was never found, and what people were experiencing in and around the area was not a one-time event. It kept happening. There were dozens of Mothman sightings that followed, and reports of this strange glowing red light hovering over the TNT area. Skeptics tried to say Mothman was just a giant bird, but no one could explain how this giant bird walked like a human and glided effortlessly, sometimes at speeds over 100 miles per hour. Now, this is where all the UFO stuff comes in. By December of 1966, a reporter and UFO investigator named John Keel decided he was going to travel out to Point Pleasant to investigate these Mothman sightings, and he also felt there might be some kind of connection to UFOs. When he finally arrived, he decided he was going to go straight to the source, the home of Linda Scarberry's parents, the McDaniels. Linda and Roger had actually moved in with her parents after their encounter because they started experiencing this strange poltergeist-like activity. There was weird beeps and noises they couldn't find the source of, as well as several other Mothman sightings. When John got there, Linda's mother Mabel helped him gather several key witnesses, including the Scarberrys, the Millettes, local reporter Mary Heyer, and her niece Connie Carpenter. Out of everyone there that night, it was actually Connie who really stood out to John because her eyes were incredibly red and inflamed, like she had this bad case of pink eye. But when he learned that Connie's eye irritation only started after her broad daylight encounter with Mothman, he knew that it was not a coincidence. In fact, John had seen similar symptoms and eye irritation in people exposed to UFOs and their high-powered UV rays, which only strengthened his belief that Mothman was connected to something bigger, possibly UFOs. And Connie's symptoms became even more important as all of these reports of UFOs and strange red lights started flooding in from all over the area. And interestingly enough, one of the very first people to document these sightings was none other than Connie's aunt, local reporter Mary Heyer. She was sharing them in her news column Where the Waters Mingle and was clearly dedicated to getting these stories out, so John Keel decided to team up with her, and together they started digging deeper into Mothman encounters and the growing number of UFO reports that seemed to be connected. Now, like I said, Mary was reporting locally on all kinds of UFO encounters, not just Mothman. I'm talking strange crafts, glowing red lights, you name it. And it wasn't long until she started receiving visits from the so-called Men in Black, and Mary was not the only one. So this is where the Men in Black come in. According to John Keel, not long after he arrived in Point Pleasant, he called up a local Air Force base to tell one of the UFO officers about what had been going on. Apparently the officer was really nice, but he just didn't seem very interested in what John had to say. However, shortly after that, a bunch of UFO and Mothman witnesses began receiving visits from strange men who seemed like they were trying to scare them into staying quiet. For example, this woman named Marcella, who witnessed both Mothman and a strange red light over the TNT area, said sometime after her encounter, she was driving down a back road when this Ford Galaxy appeared to be following her. There was this big man with a bushy wig inside. She thought that he was trying to pass her, so she slowed down, but the man actually tried to run her off the road. In January 1967, Mary Heyer was working late one night when this weird little man just showed up out of nowhere. He was short, had thick glasses, a bowl cut. He was wearing just a t-shirt and pants, although it was freezing outside. He was asking for directions, said he hitchhiked all the way from Detroit, but as he continued speaking, he kept getting closer to Mary, making her incredibly uncomfortable. When she finally got a coworker to come confront this guy with her, the man grabbed a pen, looked at it like he'd never seen one before, and then just laughed and ran out of the office when Mary told him he could keep it. Just a month later, Connie, Mary's niece, was walking to school when this black car pulled up next to her. A man in black jumped out, tried to force her into the vehicle. Luckily, she escaped and ran home, but she later found a note under her door that said, "Be careful, girl, I can get you." By early April, John Keel started to notice this surprising number of strangers just hanging around Main Street who didn't seem to fit in. They looked like federal agents, they had fresh haircuts, sharp clothes. There was always about 15 or 20 of them lurking around every single corner in this town. John even tried to talk to one, but before he could, the guy just disappeared. Whatever was happening in Point Pleasant was disturbing, but it was about to take a much darker turn. By November, so a year after the very first Mothman sightings, Mary called up John to tell him about a nightmare she had where several people were drowning in a river, Christmas packages were floating in the water. She was convinced something awful was coming, and just a few weeks later, on December 15th, 1967, it did. Around 5 p.m., the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant to Ohio, suddenly collapsed into the river during rush hour traffic. 31 vehicles fell into the water, 46 people died, and 9 others were severely injured. It was a devastating tragedy. The cause of the collapse was linked to a single crack in one of the eye bars caused by decades of stress and corrosion, but with Mothman sightings reported throughout the previous year and even near the bridge before it collapsed, many began to wonder if the Mothman was some kind of harbinger of doom and if his sightings were some kind of warning about what was to come. And then just a week after the collapse, Mary got a visit from 3 more strange men. Now, the first 2 were nearly identical. They were dressed in black overcoats, walked into her office together, claiming they'd heard about increased UFO activity in the area. Mary just nodded and handed them a folder full of reports and news clippings, so after briefly flipping through it, the men just gave it back to her and asked if anyone had ever told her to stop publishing UFO stories. When she said no, they asked what would you do if someone did, and Mary responded that she'd tell them to go to hell. Later that evening, another short man in a black suit walked into Mary's office. He was stumbling over his words, seemed pretty uneasy, but he asked Mary the same question the other men had, what she'd do if told to stop writing about UFOs. So Mary asked if he was with the 2 other guys who came in earlier, but he denied it. He said he was alone and introduced himself as a UFO researcher named Jack Brown. Interestingly enough though, this Jack Brown character went on to visit Connie and the Scarberrys, asking them what they thought Mary would do if pressured to stop talking about UFOs. There were even reports that he showed up at other homes of witnesses claiming to be a reporter. There were a lot of strange things that happened in Point Pleasant between 1966 and 1967. This really is just the tip of the iceberg, but Mothman sightings never seem to stop. Over the years, people have reported seeing Mothman all over the world, and some of these sightings have come just days or weeks before several major tragedies. Skeptics have tried to explain it away as a sandhill crane or a large bird, but no one really knows who Mothman is or was. Now, Point Pleasant really embraces its Mothman legacy. There's a museum that displays artifacts and eyewitness reports. There's a 12-foot tall Mothman statue downtown, and thousands gather every year for the Mothman Festival. Let me know in the comments all of your thoughts. Have you ever seen the Mothman? Do you think he's real? Have you ever been to the Mothman Festival? I can't wait to hear everything you guys have to say, and I will see you in my next video.